How to set up a betta tank for a sick, stressed, or injured betta. Let's be honest, unfortunately, most of the betta fish that we buy in today's stores are sick or stressed or have some sort of injury like my guy here has to his tail. No matter the cause or the type of injury, there is a really surefire way to give your betta the best chance of survival, as well as making sure that they're in an environment that they love. First off, and most importantly, as you can see, there is a heater in the back of my tank and a thermometer here to make sure that this betta's tank temperature is hovering anywhere between 78 and 81 degrees. That is an optimal temp for the betta. Another thing you might notice is that there is no flow in this tank. This is a Wallstad method tank and there is no filter. Well, no traditional filter. As you can see, there is a ton of plants, natural plants in this aquarium, and they act as a filter throughout the tank. There are rhizome plants, stem plants, floating plants, as well as pothos and begonias on top that are filtering the water 24/7. Now, Wallstad tanks aren't beginner tanks, and I don't recommend them for everybody. I do water changes and I test my water quality regularly. So please note, I am not recommending you do this. However, I am recommending that you get a sponge filter or a filter that has little to no flow in the tank, as especially if your betta is sick or injured, it's best for them to have calm waters. Here's an example of a simple sponge filter that you can use for your tank that will have little to no flow and very little surface agitation. You'll also need to grab yourself an air pump. This one's pretty powerful and I use it for multiple tanks, but go ahead and get one that's good for the size tanks that you have. Those two things, along with some airline tubing, is just enough for you to set up your betta's tank along with the filter. But even with a tank with a traditional filter, you definitely want to have live plants. Live plants give your betta a sense of security and places for them to hide when they're feeling uncomfortable. There's also no sharp edges or anything for them to hurt themselves on, kind of like plastic plants. If you are not comfortable getting live plants, go ahead and try silk plants. But again, I do recommend that you do live plants. Another thing you might notice is that there are leaves in the water. These are kappa leaves or Indian almond leaves, and they provide a feeling of cover when you put them on the surface. And then once they sink down, they start to leach tannins into the water, creating what's called a black water effect. As you can see, the water here is just a little bit tinted. It's not too dark, and he could actually use some more tannins. Tannins have an antimicrobial and antibacterial effect in the water and make sure that your betta's water quality is good, as well as making them feel more comfortable and safe as the water isn't so clear and bright. Here's an example of some little mini kappa leaves that you can get. You can just toss them in the water and let them float on the surface or go down. Or you can boil them and then pour the tannins from the leaves into the water, of course, after it's cooled. One thing that I don't have on my betta's tank that I recommend every new betta owner have is a lid. Now, the reason why I don't have a lid on my tank is I have a plethora of stem plants over the top of the tank. So even if he did try to jump out, he's most likely going to hit one of those plants, but he's also deterred from jumping because he does have all of this cover and safety. If you can, I recommend putting plants on here. Again, it makes them feel safe and protected from above. Another thing that you're going to want to get for your betta is a freshwater master test kit. Yes, it looks like a science experiment, and it does look a little complicated, but I promise you it's not. All you do is add a certain amount of drops to the water, and you check it against this key to tell you what your parameters are. And just a rule of thumb, you want your ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate to all be at 0 ideally. Now, I can make another video talking about the cycle and how to test and wait for those things. But bettas generally should be at 0 on all 3 of those items, as well as their pH should be anywhere between 7.4 and 6.8. Now, ideally, bettas will be in a solitary tank. This is a long-finned betta here, despite his injured tail. Long-finned bettas are good in 5 gallons or up. If you have a short-finned betta, they would probably prefer a 10-gallon tank. However, 5 gallons is sufficient if it's heavily planted. There are options for tank mates, but when you first bring your betta home, if they are sick, injured, or stressed, it is best for them to be in an environment where they can rest and recuperate and not have to worry about other animals in their territory. Them being alone also gives you time to see what kind of betta temperament they're going to have. I have had bettas where right off the bat, despite their sickness, they are flaring at me, they're hunting around, and then this guy here never flares. He's really sweet and doesn't really have any aggressive tendencies so far, but that is something I'm watching to make sure that I know for future what kind of tank mates he can have and where I can place him. However, one tank mate you can always have with your betta, and a tank mate that I think every tank should have, is a snail. He does have a horned knee-right snail in there that I can't find at the moment, as well as some ram's horn and bladder snails. To each their own on if you want those types of snails in your tank. Ram's horns and bladder horn snails are great tank maintenance cleaners. However, they can breed and overpopulate your tank very quickly. However, knee-right snails only reproduce in brackish water, so if you get one, you definitely won't be seeing any babies. And they're great algae cleanup crews. I do recommend everybody have some sort of snail in your tank, especially if you have live plants and substrate. Another item that you need for your betta's tank is a good light. Depending on the type of plants you have will depend on whether you need a regular aquarium light or if you need a full spectrum LED. As you can see, my light includes red spectrums. Contrary to popular belief, you don't need a big fancy light for your betta tank. Now, depending on the type of plants you have in here, you might need a more powerful light if you want them to grow. However, bettas tend to not like super bright light. Again, they like black water in their tanks, some tannins to make them feel more at home, lots of shade and cover, and places for them to hide in natural plants. So I've given you a lot of information in this video, and if you've watched it thus far, thank you for watching. I'll go ahead and throw up on the screen now some bullet points of the things that we've talked about and a list of items that you should probably get before you bring your betta home, just to make sure that you're properly prepared to give him the best experience. I'll also have the items linked in my shop, and if you'd like to go ahead, click on the link in my bio and take a look at all the things I have in there to help support you and your betta in your new home. Leave me a comment below if you would like me to go over more about the kind of plants that I have in this tank. These are all really great plants for water filtration and coverage for bettas. Bettas, I think, are the best fish. I call them water puppies, and I just hope that you and your betta have the best experience and they bring you so much joy. Have a good day. Thanks for watching.